Apollo Milton Obote was raised from the deeper recesses of Akokoro in Apache district. The son of a chief, Stanley Opeto, he would later charm his way across the hearts of Ugandans as his message gained traction with the common man. A leading rod in the fight of self-determination, Obote returned from Kenya right in time to be amongst those who midwifed Uganda's independence.
Prime Minister, Mr. Milton Obote, paid tribute to British policy when he spoke at the Constitutional Conference in London, which marked the last step towards independence.
It is a tribute to the British men and women who went to Uganda and transformed the country in a manner which has made it possible for us today to talk of the independence of Uganda. This is in fulfillment of the British policy of trusteeship and of social and economic development, which aims at preparing colonial peoples for independence.
He appeared quite polished, and his speeches were poetic renditions. Like the proverbial colossus, he straddled the political landscape of Uganda.
He came in at a critical moment and trying to balance the political forces at play and the negotiations, the delicate negotiations, which touched on trying to get independence for the whole country and the country to move as one nation. Because if you recall, leading to independence, there were some schisms within the body politic which at times threatened to tear the country. So it took delicate balance, concessions, dealing with other political interests to be able to birth the nation.
At midnight tonight, Uganda shall become independent. We shall have a Uganda flag, a national anthem, and coat of arms. These will be our symbols, but independence does not begin and end with the selection and raising of a flag, the singing of a national anthem, and the display of a coat of arms. Our independence shall mean great responsibilities for all of us without exception. Collectively, we shall all be responsible to safeguard our independence and to ensure peace and stability within our country. In addition, the government in whose name I now speak offers to you a firm determination to protect your life and property and opportunities for your advancement. It is this ensuring of peace and stability and this determination for the protection of life and property, coupled with opportunities for advancement as individuals and as combinations and as a country, that I now call upon all to pass as an irrevocable resolution, marking our new status and guiding us into the future. Let us add to that resolution that we are of Uganda and Uganda is ours.
And at midnight, Sergeant Major Sidney Small of Birmingham lowers the Union Jack that has flown in Uganda for nearly 70 years. At the same moment, the 4th Battalion King's African Rifles becomes the 1st Battalion Uganda Rifles. And to replace the Union Jack, the black, gold and red flag of the new young state, Uganda is born again, free and independent. Next day is a public holiday, and by the time the Duke and Duchess return to the Kololo Stadium for the daylight celebrations, the Governor-General and the Prime Minister have been sworn in their new roles. The Duke of Kent speaks to the people of Uganda.
It is now my solemn duty and privilege to hand to you, Mr. Prime Minister, as the representative of the peoples of Uganda, the constitutional instruments embodying the independence of Uganda. May God bless you all.
The Duke hands to the Prime Minister the constitutional instruments.
Today, we are met here not only to celebrate an end, but also to mark a beginning.
Obote as Prime Minister stood tall on the hallowed Kololo independence grounds as the British government handed over power. His presence was a culmination of a political alliance with the Kabaka party led by Edward Muteesa, the Kabaka of Baganda. However, 4 years later, this alliance would rupture.
Sir Edward Muteesa had been ruler of Buganda, the largest of the kingdoms which made up Uganda, and he was Milton Obote's choice for president of the newly independent country. But in 1966, Prime Minister Obote promoted himself to the presidency and moved to abolish the old kingdoms. He ordered an attack on the Kabaka's palace led by a new army commander, Idi Amin.
Surrounded the Kabaka's palace on the hilltop outside Kampala, and the battle began. The palace fell at dusk. The Kabaka apparently had escaped either before or during the fighting. Next day the palace was set on fire, but in the Buganda countryside the flame of rebellion is reported to be burning equally fiercely. On Friday, Dr. Obote called a press conference. President, have you any news of the whereabouts of the Kabaka?
First of all, may I intervene, Mr. President? If any of you would like to ask a question, could you give us your name and the paper you represent or whatever organization you are representing?
Sandy Gall, Independent Television News, London. Mr. President, have you any news of the whereabouts of the Kabaka?
That question, I understand, has been asked already in the press and elsewhere, but I do not know why you should ask me that question now. But the most interesting thing is that the pressmen seem to think that the Kabaka has done nothing wrong. That it's only the government that has done wrong things. The Kabaka requested foreign troops in February without authority. The Kabaka organized a rebellion. And these are not noticed. But no problem, we'll always weather through.
It's been said that you would like to put an end to the Kabaka ship. Is that so?
It's not my problem to put an end to Kabaka ship. We have 4 Kabaka ships in Uganda. And it's not, I don't have to go for 1. If I wanted to put an end to Kabaka ship, I would go for 4, not 1.
Do you expect the emergency to last much longer?
Until the situation comes to normal.
How would you describe the situation now?
Getting quiet. It was quiet yesterday, it's quiet today.
No fighting at the moment?
There hasn't been any fighting.
Except around the palace?
Around the palace there was no fighting.
What about the mortars and the rifles and the machine guns and so on?
Machine guns were in the palace. We have captured some. Guns were in the palace. We have captured some. We think others are still there, buried in the ground.
There have been reports of plans for resistance on the part of the Baganda and of leaflets being distributed. And this resistance, it said, may start on Monday, the original date of the ultimatum from the Kabaka to you. Do you have any knowledge of these reports?
We are prepared for anything. And my guess is that there won't be any resistance unless foreigners try to poke their noses into it. But we'll cut down their noses to shake.
Who do you think might intervene from outside?
I can't say anything. I don't want to mention any countries.
Have you any information about the casualties in the recent fighting around the palace?
I can't tell you that. But I'm informed that about 20 people lost their lives. About 20.
There have been suggestions that hundreds of people were killed.
I don't work on suggestions. I work on actual reports that come to be signed by appropriate officers.
And these are that about 20 people were killed in all, on both sides, on the side of the security forces?
Not a single security man was killed. Not a single.
What about outside the palace, in the countryside?
Another 20.
That's 40 altogether. So you discount reports that up to 1,000 people have been killed?
I am told the BBC said 1,000. Are you Mr. Hayes, Charles Hayes, by any way?
No, independent television. Dr. Obote said that only 40 people had been killed in the disturbances in Kampala and in the rest of Uganda. But nobody that I've talked to in Kampala believes this figure. In fact, the general impression is that the number of dead runs into several hundred, if not into several thousand. One reliable source gave me the figure of 1,700 dead. I talked to one African who lives just over the hill there, who said that he'd seen 3 lorry loads of bodies being driven away from his own village. And another African who reported seeing bodies being dumped in a mass grave near the prison at Port Bell on the shore of Lake Victoria.
Milton Obote, the Kabaka of Uganda has now been granted asylum in Britain. Among others, Sir Edward has also said he would mete out the same sentence, that is the death sentence, to you if ever he gained power in Uganda. What do you say to this, Dr. Obote?
I think I can now say that that's up to the British government. It's probable that I may have to visit Britain on official duties, and if Sir Edward would be there at large to carry out his intention of killing persons, that would be the problem of the British government. But we're not talking about this in terms of killing of this man or that person, or this person. We are interested in building a united country, and our policy will not be persecution of any person. Our policy will be to build our own country, and we are not going to talk in terms of Sir Edward. We are going to talk in terms of Uganda. And secondly, we are not going to pursue a policy where everything we do must be attached to Sir Edward. I think I can say without any fear of contradiction that we have passed the stage of considering Sir Edward as a factor in Uganda politics. We will leave it at that.
On his arrival in Britain, Sir Edward endorsed the use of further violence by his 2 million Baganda subjects to oppose any attempts by you or your government to make Uganda a republic. Do you in fact anticipate more violence from Sir Edward's supporters in Uganda?
Whatever comes, we will deal with them.
And to continue using military force to govern Uganda when the entire kingdom is reportedly antagonistic to your rule?
There is no evidence that Baganda is antagonistic to the government's aims and objectives. There is no evidence whatsoever.